Okay, the approximate age of the emergence of the gender balance structure is from the third to the fifth years. When unintegrated, it exemplifies the pattern of holding on, holding in, holding back against the fear of falling behind or the bottom falling out. Now, that is a combination of the holding patterns of the themes preceding it and the theme following it. The basic right in question is, do I have the right to want, feel, and express in a way that's natural to me? Between the ages of 3 to 6 years, peak growth rates are achieved in the frontal circuits, the anterior interhemispheric fiber systems of the corpus callosum, connecting the right and the left hemispheres of the brain, giving rise to sustained mental vigilance and regulating the ability to plan new actions. The sex hormones underlying crucial gender differentiation are active from birth and regulated by the caretaking interactions at the onset of the oral, that is the empathetic nurturing process. Genital sensitivity and interest mature in the late practicing period. Now, that term practicing period is one that developmental psychologists, people who study, talk one of the periods of toddlerhood. In the actual life of the toddler, elements of caretaking are interwoven with socialization, excitement, sexuality, shame inhibition, gender learning, differentiation of object relationships, and social interactions with more people and in more complex situations. Confusion with regards to gender identification and environmentally rewarded behaviors can lead to nonconforming adaptive patterns of gender identification. So Isa, would you show figure 15? Now, it just gives an idea of the complexity that's going on at this time of life. It's a simplified diagram demonstrating the complex interactions between external events, psychological interpretations, anticipation, motivation, and reward systems that involve neural connections up and down and regulation of brain chemistry based on learning and memory at this time of life. The resulting adaptive postures may reflect a compromise between environmental dictates and innate behavioral responses. Gender expansiveness is a term used to denote a growing awareness of the diversity of gender identifications in humans and the importance of how these gender identities are validated and respected in society. It's particularly relevant in the areas of healing and growth because of the past stigmatization and repression of transgender and gender nonconforming people. I believe breathwork has a vital role to play in both healing and growth in this area that has its roots in all of us. Besides external genitalia, which is the most frequent indicator of the sex assigned infants at birth, biological sexuality also includes chromosomal composition, internal anatomy, and even hormonal neurobiology in the brain. These factors, which can come in any number of combinations, influencing a person's experiences of themselves, are not typically taken into account when a sex is assigned. Each person also has an internal sense of self known as gender identity, which develops over the course of a person's life and which may change over time. Transgender people have an internal sense of their gender identity that does not match the one society may expect of them based on their sex assigned at birth. Gender nonconforming people may identify with the sexual orientation assigned at birth, but express themselves in ways that do not conform to the societal expectations of male-female expressions. For example, their manner of dress, their vocal and physical expressions, their tastes and interests. Gender is actually a non-binary construct that allows for a range of gender identities, and a person's gender identity may not align with a sex assigned at birth. Indeed, every human being's experience of themselves as a sexual being is continually evolving throughout their life, but seldom talked about openly. In the practice of breath work, it is important to model an acceptance of ambiguity as a transgender, gender nonconforming person develops and explores aspects of their gender, especially in childhood and adolescence. A non-judgmental stance towards gender nonconformity can help to counteract the pervasive stigma faced by many transgender, gender nonconforming people, and provide a safe environment to explore gender identity and make informed decisions about gender expression. It should also be understood that gender identity and sexual orientation are distinct but interrelated constructs. Sexual orientation is a person's sexual and/or emotional attraction to another person. A person's sexual orientation identity cannot be determined simply by examining their external appearances or behavior, but must incorporate a person's identity and self-identification. Gender identity is a person's felt, inherent sense of gender. For most people, gender identity develops earlier than sexual orientation. Gender identity is often established in young toddlerhood, compared with awareness of sex attraction, which often emerges in early adolescence. Now, individuals may become aware that their gender identity is not in full alignment with sex assigned at birth in childhood, adolescence, or adulthood. The developmental pathway of gender identity typically includes a progression through multiple stages of awarenesses, explorations, expression, and identity integration. Similarly, a person's sexual orientation may progress through multiple stages of awareness, exploration, and identity through adolescence and into adulthood. The experience of questioning one's gender can create significant confusion for some transgender, gender nonconforming people, especially for those who are unfamiliar with the range of gender identities that exist. To explain any discordance they may experience between their sex assigned at birth, related social expectations, patterns of sexual and romantic attraction, and/or gender role nonconformity and gender identity, some transgender, gender nonconforming people may assume that they must be gay, lesbian, bisexual, or queer, that is, non-binary. A safe and informed self-discovery process may allow transgender, gender nonconforming people the comfort and opportunity to explore attractions or aspects of their sexual orientation that previously had been repressed, hidden, or in conflict with their identity. Transgender, gender nonconforming people may experience a renewed exploration of their sexual orientation, a widened spectrum of attraction, or a shift in how they identify their sexual orientation in the context of a developing transgender, gender nonconforming identity. But focusing solely on sexual orientation as the cause for discordance may obscure awarenesses of a full transgender, gender nonconforming person's identity. It can be very important to include sexual orientation and gender identity in the process of identity exploration, as well as in the associated decisions about which options which will work best for any person. In addition, many transgender, gender nonconforming adults may have disguised or rejected their experience of gender incongruence in childhood or adolescence to conform to societal expectations and minimize their fear of difference. The inner self-acceptance one comes to can involve freedom to explore one's gender identity and sexual orientation, but is not solely defined by it. So in other words, identity goes beyond just those aspects of one's orientation to life. Breathwork helps people come to a self-acceptance that goes beyond all categorical definitions. The many different views of somatic Oedipal character formation reflect this complexity. The formation dynamic is postulated to be that the expression of initiative, that is, assertion and reception, was hampered in childhood because of the opposite gendered parents' inability to accept emerging gender-related characteristics, and through continued molding by parental expectations. This dynamic culminates in the development of a challenge of the freedom of expression versus gender identity. If, as a female, my feminine initiative, the way I am as a female naturally, is a threat to my parents, I may conclude that masculine expression is necessary to the survival of my self-expression. To preserve my initiative, that is, my ability to express myself, I conclude I must act masculine. On the other hand, if I'm too masculine in my expression, I may deny my feminine identity and the development of this side of my personality. My masculine and feminine sides are felt as a threat to one another and appear to be at war. The male child at this stage concludes that the feminine expression is safer than masculine, but again, too much feminine expression threatens the masculine I that he is also supposed to maintain. Alexander Lowen describes this structure as a mixture of what I refer to as energetic grounded, that is the next theme we'll study in the final session, and the pre-existing empathetic nurturer or steadfast supportive character traits, and results in the passive feminine structure for males and the masculine aggressive structure for females. These patterns are not defined by gender preferences or varying sexual orientations. The general somatic holding pattern is armoring in the thighs, pelvis, chest, and eyes, but will express differently along gender lines. And now both gender identifications demonstrate more ability to deal effectively with the world than prior body themes that we've studied. Let's show this is an example of the gender-balanced male. In males, the physical presentation is a soft, rounded exterior with narrow shoulders and a contracted waist with an abdominal bulge. The expression is soft and compliant, but with an undermining attitude when stressed, as energy is held in the head. Since expression of assertion was a threat to the father, hopelessness and despair set in and underlie his passivity as a defense against anger, especially anger towards a male authority figure. This lack of aggression safeguards his fear of emotional castration by the father. But this challenge to emerging assertiveness initiative begets a pattern of deception or compliance as a principal mode of being, masking underlying anger. The split presents in the male as one of an inner feeling that's assertive and an outer gender expression that's more feminine. Figure 16 shows the body structure of a man with the gender balance theme. So you can see here that the face is somewhat expressionless, soft and plastic. The shoulders are narrow. The chest has large breasts. The abdomen has a bulge. The hands are soft and weak. The waist is contracted. Movement is never brusque or assertive. The body is hard and rigid underneath, but it's fairly unified. It's not split or fragmented like the psychic sensitive. Okay, now let's look at the gender balanced female, figure 17. Now, in females, this pattern presents as a wide pelvis with narrow chest and shoulders, the lower body being weak with passive withholding, especially at the anus. The split is expressed in the upper and lower body. The upper, rigid and highly charged, the lower, weak and more passive, and a tightly held jaw with sharp, focused eyes and a tendency to psychological aggression when stressed. When expressing feminine traits, the child received a parental message that it's only through strong assertion that she will be accepted. So a strong pride covers a fear of dependency as well as an ongoing struggle between strength and dependency. In this figure, it shows the body structure of a woman with the gender balance theme. So the upper body is highly charged and can be like the energetic grounded, which we'll study next, or somewhat of the oral type, the empathetic nurturing. The eyes are focused and sharp. The jaw is forward, lower body weak, passive, withholding, especially at the anus. And the body is muscular development of male, especially the hair and the skin being darker. Now, over-aggressiveness and competition with males is typical. Conflict between the aggressive ego demands and more receptive qualities result in the aggression being used in service of the ego. Ego needs such as competition and success overcome the experience of pleasure and getting one's bodily needs met. A sense of worth comes through achievement. The emotional presentation of the fear-based polarity of this type is depressive tendencies from internalized anger and underlying fear because of a block against opening up or surrendering to felt senses of pleasure in the body. This pattern is noted as having impaired grounding and is prone to sudden bursts of energy, emotional expression, and dramatization of events. So let's look at the integrated states here. In the integrated states, there is an equilibrium between inner and outer in the male and between upper and lower in the female. Therefore, each gender presents a balanced assertion and sensitivity of both masculine and feminine attributes, without over-exaggeration of either. They accept and appropriately apply balanced male-female initiative in their work and play. They, in a very real sense, have the best of both worlds, of receptivity and assertiveness, and orchestrate the dance between them with elegance. They are comfortable with either traditional male or female roles and help bridge cultural stereotypes. Their combined male-female strengths allow them an integrative perspective that brings these talents to bear in technological as well as interpersonal problem solving. So the early family dynamics for the gender balanced may include the mother's message to her son, to the male, I wanted a daughter, and to the daughter, your worth depends on your achievement. The father's message to the son is, if I stay on top of you, I'll be a man. The mother's message to the female is, I wanted a son. The father's message to the female is, if I have enough men around me, I'll feel like a man. So let's try this on. Let's try these body themes on now. So first of all, feel a split internally. Let's do the female first. It's a split between the upper, which is rigid or empathetic nurturing, and the lower, which is soft and more full. Now, for the male, the outer body is soft and receptive, but with an inner rigid defensiveness. Now, let's try on these behaviors. That's for female expression. The jaw is forward and the fists are cocked. And the expression is, you can even say this out loud if you choose, I can take any man here. And for the male, the soft and more sarcastic response to that is, I bet you can, sweetie. Oh. Okay. I'll be breathing with you till next week. Blessings to our circle and all sentient beings.